I've been talking about surmounting the seemingly insurmountable. I think that helps place us in the challenge. And it's not the first time that our species has had to face seemingly insurmountable things, so we can learn from a few of our previous examples. As I said, speed and scale are the parameters that we have to work within. So what does life in emergency mode actually mean? And this is pretty hard for us because most of us haven't actually been in one. Not one that's been a long-term one, that, you know, for the long haul. But what we do know is that we have to step it up now, so that the incremental changes that we've been working on, and some of us, you know, there's been a lot, all the people in this room know all about this. We've been working hard now for a long time, but it's been incremental change. So how do we get now the big leaps forward? So we need to step it up, and that's a decision is made, I am now in emergency mode. And that then has an enhancing capacity. Emergency mode is a clear-headed, highly focused state of heightened awareness. It's about acting strategically, collaborating, cooperating with creativity, zeal and determination. That's my take on it. And I guess this is the beginning of a discussion about what emergency mode is, so other people will have other things to say in there too. It's operating at emergency speed and being there for the long haul. And life goes on while in emergency mode. I heard a story about some people being interviewed who were refugees, and they were asked, well, what was going on for you while you were 3 years in that refugee camp? And the young woman said, well, my boyfriend went off with my best friend, and I was really heartbroken for most of that time. So in a refugee camp or in emergency mode, there's still births, deaths and marriages. There's still work, love and fun. And we need to look at how we live a life in emergency mode for the long haul. And that's it for me for now. Thank you.
When the organisation was formed in 2000, the central role that the organisation saw for itself the purpose was to accelerate the uptake of sustainable living. And just recently at our last AGM, we've endorsed that as an organisation as our central purpose, to accelerate the uptake of sustainable living. How have we been doing that? We've developed an approach which we've called a platform approach. And that came about in the early days of the organisation, recognising that there was a vast array of work that was being done in the sustainability movement in many different aspects, whether it's permaculture groups, whether it's transport, food and agriculture. And one of the things that we thought that we could do to help accelerate the uptake of sustainable living was to connect people that were looking for that information to the various different organisations that were spread right throughout Victoria, Australia and the world. We've taken a regional focus to Victoria. However, the Sustainable Living Festival, for example, is a national festival. The calendar that we also produced to connect people with the various different events which are happening right across Australia in relation to sustainability, the Sustainable Living Directory and the network groups as well. So each of these platforms are designed to connect people with information so that they can accelerate their uptake of sustainable living within their own personal lives. The concept of mobilising whole communities has really been a next chapter for us. We've really been looking at, well, how would you more strategically go about that acceleration through the concept of mobilising whole communities, reaching everyone everywhere. Giselle's going to go into that a little bit later on today to give you more of a sense of a model that has been developed that's looking at that particular issue. So what's the next stage? And of course, just sort of reinforcing the fact that what we're trying to do with each of those actions is to influence the top vision, which is to create a sustainable world. So what's proposed next? That's where we're up to here. That's why we brought you here today, SLF members and associates, is to present this concept for discussion and dialogue. A 10-year vision, a 10-year transition vision. That's where we're at. Just a few little definitions to help people. A 10-year, we're talking about the next decade. We're not just talking about a 10-year. We might spend 10 years talking about it and then we might jump into it, or we might spend the next 20 years talking about it and then we'll go into the 10 years. It's the next decade. This proposal is about the next decade. Social, how are we defining social? We're talking about individuals and all parts of the community. The structural representation in the vision is the physical infrastructure or the systems. And we've got two speakers that are going to be talking on both of those sections in just a moment. Transition, obviously, is moving away from something to something else, so it's a change. And enables the restoration of safe climate, so return to a safe level that Carol was talking about before. So they're just helping you with a little bit of some of the definitions if people were beginning to ask some questions already around some of the terminology that we've started to use in the vision. We also, in just a moment, are going to hear from Philip Sutton, who's going to talk about this thing that's behind me, which is mapping out the timeline for the next decade. So it's a proposed timeline for the next decade. And Philip's going to present some work that he's been doing on the strategic thinking of the various different phases that we might move through over that period of time. That's the little sort of, if you like, the proposal package that we've got today that's on the table. The vision, the timeline, and the mobilisation strategy. That's the concept of the model that could help us potentially to get this uptake that we're looking within the community.
Now I'm going to take you through this lovely diagram here. Actually getting into the mechanics of the 10 years and the framework of the 10 years and some of the thinking behind what the 10 years is going to look like. So first of all, we've got Philip Sutton. Philip, most of you are familiar with, but I will just remind people who aren't, inform people who aren't and remind people that Philip is a convener of Greenleap Strategic Institute. That's a not-for-profit environmental strategy think tank and advisory organisation promoting the very rapid achievement and global and local ecological sustainability. He is the assistant convener of the Climate Emergency Network, and he's the co-founder of Safe Climate Australia. And he's also our past president of SLF, and he's also president of the Australian New Zealand Society of Ecological Economics. Now, he also recently co-authored the book Climate Code Red, and if you haven't read it, it's a fantastic read, and that's basically putting the case about emergency action required for climate change. So over to Philip.
When we talk about having a decade to do something, quite often that's a rhetorical flourish, and it doesn't necessarily translate into a clear sense of what to do. So what we've tried to do is to have a look at what we might do with this 10 years. Now, the first thing, there's a paper going around which is called Why a Transition Decade, Why 10 Years? 10 years is just simply a really short time. It's longer than 1 year and it's less than 20. And the reason for that is because if we tried to transform the entire economy in 1 year, I think we probably wouldn't quite manage it. If we try to do it in 20, we'll probably end up destroying the planet. If we do it as fast as we can, then the real question is how fast could you go? And our best experience on going as fast as is humanly possible was basically during the Second World War, when people had the fear of death in mind and they were able to transform their economies at a huge rate. And so that's one sense of how fast you could go. But in the paper, it actually gives a sort of a quick summary of why we might want to move at a speed that's like 10 years. So I won't go into that further, but there is some background on that. The next issue is that if we're going to get a safe climate, how much do we have to change? Now, Matt Wright in a moment will be outlining to you a program of how you could create a safe climate economy, how to create a zero emissions economy.